You're listening to Big World Network.
Subprimeval, Season 3, Episode 7, Critical Mass, Part 1. Written by Robert S.C. Cutler. Read by Fentress O. Moore. Special Agent Riley stormed into the lobby of the agency's lodging facility, screaming into his phone. What was once Grissom Air Force Base building had been turned into a dormitory, or barracks, according to Riley, for essential mission personnel. The plush, comfortable accommodations with a swimming pool, gym, and rec room offered its sequestered guests all the comforts of a timeshare property. "I just want to know why that fool Alexander was on television in the first place, let alone that god-awful network," Riley yelled. "He knows the protocol better than most, and I don't give a goddamn if he is running for president in the next election. This is not the time to be campaigning." Riley pushed the end button and clipped the phone onto his belt. Looking up, he discovered he had an audience. 3 new guests were waiting in line at the check-in desk while Claire Davis typed away at a computer. Her strawberry blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore a pink shirt with Baby 2014 spelled out in different types and colored flowers. "The other 2 check in yet, Claire?" asked Riley in a calmer voice. "No, sir. They're expected on the next transport," Claire answered. "Good. Tell your husband to meet me in my office. I have an important assignment for him. He's in the kitchen going over the week's menu if you happen to wander that way," Claire said. Riley paused a moment, pondering what to do. "I could use a ham sandwich. Thank you, Claire." In the cafeteria-sized kitchen, Gator, or Clem, which he preferred to be called but almost never was, leaned over a prep table, studying the menu while sipping a tall can of energy drink. With a black Sharpie, he marked through collard greens, grits, and fried okra. "Yuck," he said aloud. "Something wrong with the menu?" asked Riley as he strolled into the kitchen. "I believe our head chef thinks we're living in the Deep South. Some of his selections aren't very appetizing," Gator said with a sneer. Riley took the menu from Gator. "Let me take a look." "Agree? Agree? What's wrong with the fried okra? I love fried okra. For that matter, our guests might like collard greens and grits as well. Why don't you let Armando take care of the food selections? I have a special assignment for you, my friend." Gator's face lit up at the words special assignment. Since the day he and Claire had come to work for Riley and the agency, Gator's life had been one adventure after another, or that's how he saw it anyway. Riley's task had taken Gator all over the country and on one trip to Mexico, where he had learned the hard way that he really shouldn't drink the water. Hobbling on his prosthetic foot, Gator made his way around the counter and took a small manila envelope from Riley. "Still uncomfortable?" Riley asked, referring to Gator's right foot. Gator looked down and lifted his foot off the floor. "Not the greatest, but I'll manage." Riley grinned, turned, and walked away. "Not to worry, my friend. You'll be fitted with a new one when you return." Anxious to see where he was going next, Gator tore open the envelope and gasped, "Holy buckets!" Freakshow and Dr. LaCroix walked into the containment center, a warehouse-sized area with several standalone, reinforced 12-by-12 cages. Surprised to see Riley standing next to the cage that held a larger-than-average creature, the 2 colleagues cleared their throats and rushed over to their boss. "Sir, we weren't aware of your visit," LaCroix said. "Why is this one so lethargic?" asked Riley. "The other animals are pacing and making that maddening cooing sound. The little one actually growled and bared its teeth when I walked by, even spit at me. This one, however, is just lying in its own excrement, staring off with a glazed look." "It came to us in this condition," Freakshow explained. "I took some blood samples just about an hour ago, but the lab isn't quite up and running, so it will take some time to get the results back." Riley looked both Freakshow and Dr. LaCroix up and down in a condescending manner. "I don't like excuses. What I do like is results." "We'll get right on it, sir," LaCroix said. "Where was this creature harvested?" asked Riley. "Davenport, Iowa," Freakshow answered. "Any special circumstances? Particularly hard to catch?" "The containment team we had in the area heard of a disturbance in a middle school over their police scanner. When they arrived, there was a crowd outside the gymnasium. Knowing there was nothing they could do to save the people inside, the police were in recovery mode, but were too afraid to confront the creature. When our guys arrived, they convinced the police that they had the means to kill it. The scene inside was like no other they had witnessed before. Remnants of over 20 bodies scattered about. The gym floor was slick with blood. This one creature alone killed and ate every living soul in that room. Efficient machines, Raleigh admired. The one you told me about in the Ohio lab was in the same lethargic state. Consumed a handful of people itself, didn't it? Freakshow nodded. As far as we could tell. You see the connection, don't you, Dr. LaCroix? Asked Riley. LaCroix studied the lethargic creature's glazed-over eyes and the yellow discharge from its ears and nostrils. You know how to eradicate these nasty things? Let's just say we have a promising start. Riley grinned. After thoroughly interrogating the surviving staff from the Wichita facility, I discovered something quite interesting. Dr. Teray had been keeping 2 separate research records, one for the agency and one for the terrorist group she is working for. Most of the research conducted in Ohio and Kansas was designed to lead to dead ends, to distract from Teray's true agenda. However, the staff in Kansas managed to get the answers we were searching for despite Teray's treachery, an antidote to our growing problem. Teray ordered the executions of all research personnel in both facilities, but she got sloppy, as evidenced by your survival, Dr. LaCroix, and the handful of scientists that locked themselves in a walk-in freezer in Wichita. Although they almost froze to death, the reinforced structure of the freezer helped protect them when the underground facility collapsed after you and your comrades set off that earthquake, Agent Shore. The research notes were saved, asked LaCroix. No, but 2 scientists from Wichita facility with vast knowledge on the matter are expected to arrive shortly. I'm also sending a courier to pick up something that will be of great use to your staff, Dr. LaCroix. Something that should blow the lid off of this thing. Gator curled up in the canvas crew seat of the C-130, clutching a fantasy novel to his chest and trying to hold down his lunch as the big turboprop aircraft made its descent toward an airstrip on one of the furthermost islands in the Aleutian chain. The 40-year-old fuselage creaked, moaned, and rattled through the turbulent air above the Bering Sea, reminding Gator of the dirt road that his grandparents once lived off of in Wabash, Indiana. Just as he thought the rough ride couldn't get any worse, the aircraft dropped 100 feet in a split second, causing Gator to lose his fight with keeping down his lunch. Better clean yourself up, Mr. Davis, a young airman said as he tossed Gator a roll of toilet paper. We'll be landing in 5 and taking back off in 30. Covered in vomit and too embarrassed to look the airman in the eye, Gator just nodded, letting him know he understood. Getting knocked around by the violent turbulence, he clumsily unrolled half the roll of toilet paper and cleaned off the front of his parka the best he could. Closing his eyes, he thought about the past few months, which felt more like years. His short career with the Wichita police seemed more like a dream than reality. After that bizarre night of losing his foot and almost losing Claire, he felt more in control of his life than ever before. Although he was stuck back in Indiana and way too close to Claire's parents, both he and his wife had great-paying jobs with outstanding benefits. Their daughter was due in 2 months, and they were less than a year away from having enough money saved up for a down payment on their first house. Special Agent Riley, cold and condescending to most, treated both he and Claire like family and trusted them with information even Major Wallace wasn't privy to. With the exception of this particular nauseating flight, life was pretty good. Make sure you're strapped in, the airman yelled, jolting Gator out of his daydream. This is going to be a rough one. Moments later, the C-130's main landing gear made hard contact with the airstrip, followed by the nose. With the thrust reversers engaged and brakes applied, the big aircraft shuddered. Both Gator and the airman were forced forward against their safety restraints. Unable to bear the weight of a large crate, a cargo strap snapped, allowing the heavy wooden box filled with spare engine parts to fly forward and crash into the jump seats just to the right of Gator. Shit, that was close, the airman laughed. Gator didn't find it amusing. While the aircraft was taxiing, the plane's crew chief came out of the flight deck to see what the big crash was. Whoa, who's the dumbass that loaded this? He asked the airman. And why isn't the cargo net up? They said we wouldn't need it, the airman answered. Who's they? Racine and Fairchild. Figures it would be those 2 morons, the crew chief laughed, and then addressed Gator. You okay, Mr. Davis? A little rattled and nauseous, but not hurt, Gator said. Good. The package you'll be receiving is ready and waiting in the flight office. You'll have a few minutes to get cleaned up while we unload the cargo and refuel. The head's just through the main doors. And don't worry about blowing chow. We've all done it before. Claire sat in front of the big flat-screen television in the lobby, mesmerized by the horrific images of the ruins of Wichita and scenes of chaos in Oklahoma City and Lincoln, Nebraska. A map displaying the infestation in the middle of the country transitioned through projections of the next 6 months, showing the creatures spreading as far east as Ohio and as far west as Utah. Claire put her hand on her belly and sighed. "Hey there," Cassie greeted Claire as she joined her on the plush sofa. "Crazy, isn't it?" Claire nodded and wiped a tear from her eye. "I just hope our guys can find a way to stop them." "I know my brother will," Cassie smiled. "He's one of the smartest people I know." "When's your baby due?" "Looks like you're just about 4 months," Claire asked Cassie. "Just about. Next week will be 4. I can't even button my pants anymore." "Say goodbye to your body," Claire laughed. "I kept my early maternity pants. You're welcome to them." "Oh, thank you. I didn't know what I was going to do being stuck in this place and not allowed to leave. I really need to see an OB. I haven't been back since I found out I was pregnant." "Riley said I could take you to my doctor on Thursday. I already made an appointment for you. One of our research techs is also expecting, so she'll be going with us." Cassie's face lit up. "Girls' day out? Maybe we can do some shopping?" Claire shook her head. "Sorry, we can't. I have strict orders to take you to the appointment and bring you right back. There's too much at risk with this project. After the head of the research program went berserk and killed everyone, Riley had all the essential personnel basically impounded. Although my husband and I can leave the base anytime we wish, we still have limitations on where we go and who we talk to. But I don't work for you guys. Why am I stuck here? Let me put it this way. You and your friend Trina are lucky Riley didn't send you to Cuba or Alaska like he wanted to. Your brother Devin talked him out of it." Cassie sighed and crossed her arms. "I guess Indiana isn't that bad." Gator walked off the C-130 and into the cold, blowing wind. The long walk to the flight operations building was miserable. Although he grew up where it seemed like it was cold much more than warm most of the year, Gator had never built up a tolerance to frigid weather and often dreamed of moving one day to Florida. Once inside the building, he was handed a sealed silver package and directed to the locker room. "What's this?" Gator asked. A master sergeant with bristly short hair and a weather-beaten face looked at Gator like he was an idiot for asking such a stupid question. "First throw that nasty jacket in the trash and then put the biohazard suit on." "What biohazard suit?" The master sergeant raised his eyebrows. "You're holding it in your hands." "Oh, I'll need another jacket if I throw this one away." "Suit won't fit over the jacket, but don't worry. These things are sweat factories. You'll be plenty warm." When Gator emerged from the locker room, the master sergeant was waiting for him with a large hood in his hand. Before Gator could utter a sentence, the hood was put over his head and velcroed in place. "How am I supposed to eat with this thing on?" asked Gator. "You don't," the master sergeant answered with a grunt. "Your package is waiting for you in the next room." He grunted again and walked away. When Gator walked through the double doors, he was met by 2 other people dressed in the same garb as his. Sitting on a cart in the middle of the room were 2 large metal containers decorated with biohazard and liquid nitrogen warning labels. One of the men motioned toward them and told Gator they were all his. "Whatever you do, don't open these things up. They will more than keep cold for your trip back to the States," the man said and then laughed. "Oh, and tell Riley that Chuck says he sucks at golf." Gator nodded and gave thumbs up, then looked upon the metal containers with concern. Eating collard greens and grits sounded a lot better than having to babysit whatever deadly organism was housed up in those silver buckets. Pushing the cart out into the cold wind and having it cut right through the suit, he decided that the master sergeant was a liar. Freakshow stood at the kiosk looking up at the security cameras. "Agent Shore and 2 guests to enter the facility." The door buzzed, and 2 agents dressed in black tactical gear came through and motioned for all 3 to come forward. "IDs out where I can see them," one of the agents said. After being waved through, Dr. Ava Chalmers and Dr. Leo Basili followed Freakshow and the 2 agents through the door and into a reception area. Compared to the Ohio site, the Indiana facility was bland and had a sterile feel to it. "Dr. LaCroix is waiting for us in the containment center. Are either of you from Wichita?" Freakshow asked in an attempt to break the ice. Neither answered, but stared ahead with a vacant look in their eyes. Freakshow was taken aback by their gaunt appearance that reminded him of Holocaust victims. As they approached LaCroix, Freakshow could see she was thinking the same thing. LaCroix shook their hands and introduced herself. "Hello, I'm Dr. Jean LaCroix. It's a pleasure to meet you both." Each of their hands was cold and bony. LaCroix had a difficult time hiding the revulsion on her face. Our pet project is right over here. Freakshow gestured over to the lethargic creature. Have either of you ever seen symptoms like these before? Asked LaCroix. Ava Chalmers studied the creature with sullen green eyes, moving as if each step was a calculated risk. She walked around the cage, scanning every inch of the sick animal, as if she and Dr. Basili were reading each other's minds. Both looked up from the creature at the same time and nodded in agreement. The ones we had on the special diet exhibited the same symptoms, Dr. Basili said. What did the special diet consist of? Asked LaCroix. In a raspy, low voice, Chalmers answered, People.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.